It symbolizes a servant. Okay, so it symbolizes an ox. That's the reason why it has this ox head shape. Then the second form that we see is what we call the paleo, right? So this form with the ox head, that's going to be the proto-cyanatic. That's the oldest form. That's the oldest written form, yes. Okay. Proto-cyanatic or cyanatic. S-I-N-A-I-T-I-C. Okay. So that's the one that we call paleo. This one here is the one we call paleo. That's the one that we do our at the end, you know what I mean? That we, because it's an easier form. No, I've seen it with these, with the paleo. Well, at the time they were coming directly out of Egypt, so they would have had that kind of that older, you know, the more hieroglyphic looking style. However, it's called proto-cyanatic because they received, you know, they received it before they went to Mount Sinai to receive the, you know, to receive the Ten Commandments. So it would have been the paleo form, yes. Okay. And then you have this next form. This is the one that we're most familiar with, right? Now, this is called the Ashur. Okay, A-S-S-H-U-R, Ashur. So later on, you know, y'all are familiar with, you know, they went from one place to another, then they were taken captivity, you know, they were taken into captivity and they went to Babylon and then they came out and then they, well, it's called Ashur because this is the form that they came out of Assyria with. So the area known as Assyria, right, in Hebrew is Ashur. So that's the form that they came out with. It's kind of a Babylonian type form. Okay. You'll see two other forms. All right. One is called this is also the same type that you'll see, the Ashur script is the same type that you'll see in Sidurim, in prayer books. Okay. That's what you'll see in there. And then there's offshoots of that. You have what they call the stam, which is a particular type of that lettering, which is reserved for fancy holy books. And I mean, and then you'll also have, it looks a little different. Yeah. The letters have these, some of the letters have these things that they call crowns on them, and they'll have little arms that stick off with little balls on the end, look like feathers. Yeah, make it look fancy. Kinda. And then you have what they call the block form, which is similar to the, yeah, that's like kind of like if I was to write it up here and I just kind of wrote it real quick, you know what I mean? That would be the block form. It doesn't have all of the fancy little sweeps and all that kind of, okay, that's the block. And that's what you're normally going to see. That's what you're normally going to see, like newspapers and stuff written in. You'll see it written in a block form. All right. Now, there's one other form, and we don't cover this very much because we don't use it very often. But how many of us, and it's a good deal, how many of us, when we were growing up, had to take cursive writing in school? Okay. So a lot of us did. Well, Hebrew has a cursive or a script form as well. And it looks a little different. So up here with the Aleph, we've seen these styles. So if we wanted to see what a script Aleph looks like, it looks like this. That's a script Aleph. Okay, so if I was writing you a letter, I was writing you a letter in Hebrew, right? And we're friends, and you know, I mean, that would be the form that I would use. It's very informal. It's you know, but that's the looks like that. Okay. Well, I mean, and you know, well, again, they all have a common place that they start from. Oh, wait until you see some of the other script forms of the letters. You'll be like, where in the world did that come from? You'll see some more. Yeah, I'm going to show you every script form along with it because I didn't put them on this paper back when I made it. So I'm going to make sure that you see them. She's got her own everything, that one. So you'll also notice over here that I have a number 1 in between the word, or in between the proto-Sinaitic form and where it says silent letter. Okay, that's because the Aleph has a numerical value of 1. So they don't have separate letters and numbers, right? So they use their, it's just like the Romans. They use their letters for numbers as well. Okay? It's just the simplest form. You don't have to come up with a, so anyway, so the Aleph has a numerical value of 1. Okay? So the way that their numbers work, they go from 1 to 10, 10 to 100, and then from 100 to 400. And there are differing thoughts on how they get numbers higher than 400. Some schools teach that you use the Sophite or the final versions of the letters for higher numbers, 500, 600, 700, 800, 900. And then there's also little clues when you see a word, you'll see some certain marks, and that will let you know, okay, this is a number or this is a special date. You know what I mean? Like, for example, the date 1948, that should be pretty familiar for most of us, right? That's when the state of Israel was created, 1948, right? Well, that group of letters has a little mark inside of it that lets you know, okay, this is a special time. This is a special date. I call it Gerash and tell you this is what that's, pay attention to this because this is important. And so, but like I said, we'll get to that point. Okay. So we have the Aleph. Again, it's a silent letter. Okay. 2 silent letters in Hebrew, right? Aleph and Ayin. Now, we're not going to get to Ayin for a couple of weeks, but remember, it's a silent letter as well. Okay? So we talk about the paleo meanings, right? These letters have meanings. So on the top, we see it. And when I say the top, I mean like the most literal, okay? The scriptures in Hebraic thought there are different ways to interpret scriptures, okay? So you have 4 different levels. You have the Peshat, which is the literal meaning of the text. Do this. Don't do that. They walked from Bethlehem to Bethsaida. That's it. That's the literal meaning. Okay, that's the Peshat level. Okay. Then you have Remez, right? You have Drash. Drash is like how Yahushua taught. It's using a story or a parable in order to teach. Yeah, that's Drash, yes. Yeah, D''Rash, Drash. All right, the first one is Peshat, right? So Drash, or Remez is the second, Remez, and we'll come back to those at another time. But like I said, and then you have what's called the Sod level, okay? And that's the hidden deep meanings of stuff. It's kind of how Shaul, the Apostle Paul, it's how he taught, was on. That's why Peter said, there's some things in his writing that are very difficult to understand. Well, that's because they were on a much deeper level than what most people were going to. And the word sod means hidden. S-O-D, but it'd be pronounced sod. Okay? And like I said, Darash means to investigate or to examine. So all of these things have, but what's cool is when you put all of them together, you got Peshat, Remez, Darash, and Sod, P-R-D-S. The word is Pardes, right? Which is where the word paradise comes from. So when you understand the scriptures, right, when you understand them on all these levels, you can be seen to be in paradise, like in a heavenly state. So But anyway, on the top level, it is an ox, okay? So it also denotes, a servant, someone who's willing to do something, somebody who is meek and lowly. It also denotes physical strength. Now, I'd say that because in America, we have a hard time differentiating between strength and power. Okay? Physical strength. I can come over here and pick up this table and move it over there. But I don't have the power to move it with my mind. Okay? They're different things. Right? Strength is physical, where power is a force. It's something, it could be emotional. You've seen something on TV that was very powerful emotionally, and it may make you cry, or you hear some music, or you watch the last part of the second half of Fiddler on the Roof. Okay, very powerful, right? So that's what I'm saying. When we talk about the Aleph, we talk about strength. This is physical strength, brute strength. Okay. Also talks about stability, unity, things like that. Okay. So being unified, when you have two oxen and they're in a yoke, they're pulling together, right? They're unified. They're doing that job. Scriptures tell us that we're not supposed to plow with an ox and an ass together, right? Because your rows are going to be all crooked, and this one may stop, and this one's pulling, and it's just going to be a big mess. That's not it. Their attitudes are not the same. You have a servant and something willful, something stubborn. Do you see what I'm saying? So yes, the the donkey is a servant as well. He's a livestock, but he's got a whole different attitude than the ox does. He's stubborn and obstinate. He does what he wants. The ox does what he's told to do. So you see, that's why we talk about stability and unity, right? So remember also that when it comes to these letters, if we have, Yahweh is an L of order, right, and of balance. So if we have positive meanings, we have to have negative meanings as well. And we find that we get our usage in a word based on the context of that word. How is it being used? Is it being used in a positive sense? Is it being used in a negative sense? Well, because of that, that's how we know which direction to go with this word. When we do, when we tear a word apart, see. So on the negative side, and you'll notice it says NEG, right, in parentheses. So that's the negative meaning. So if you have strength on the positive side, you have weakness on the negative side. Okay? Disunity versus unity, right? Like that ox and that donkey pulling in different directions, or this one he's sitting down and this one's trying to, And then you have stubbornness. We talk about that donkey again, right? So all of that falls under the letter Aleph. Now, are these meanings exhaustive? By no means. All right? There's all kinds of, you can take the concept of strength, and there's all kinds of offshoots underneath it. But if we look at a few examples, right? If we look at a few examples, we see, strength, we see unity, we can see other, what's the word? Like I said, like offshoots of those things. They all fall under that same letter. Yeah. I mean, they're, different sub-meanings. So that's why a lot of times when I'm like, okay, well, what's it mean? Well, it means this, it means that, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's because, given the context that it's being used in, that's how we know. That's how we get the clue. That's how we get the hint, right? So that's the letter Aleph. Any questions on Aleph? I guess not. Okay. So I'm going to use this script up here for Aleph. Chris, roll it on up to Bet, please. All right. That's good. All right. So now we have our second letter, right? And that's the letter Bet. All right. Now, you'll see here that the first form of bet is this kind of square spiral looking thing. Okay? This is very similar, the square spiral looking thing is very similar to the actual Egyptian hieroglyph for a house. They're very similar. They're the problem? Okay, so that's your proto-Sinaitic. Well, like I said, it's very close to the actual Egyptian hieroglyph for a house. Okay, so the next we have our paleo, right? And it's a little triangle looking thing with a curved tail. All right, so that's our paleo there. And then you'll notice here, I've got the same letter done twice, except for one has a dot inside of it, right? That's because this is one of those 6 letters that in biblical Hebrew changes its sound if it has a dot inside of it, or a dagesh, right? Dagesh, to emphasize, okay? So without the dot, it's a vet, and with the dot, it's bet. So v, soft sound, b, emphasized or strong sound. Yes, sir. No. It just changes the sound that it's being pronounced with. Okay? Now remember, like I said, we have 6 letters that biblically do that. But in modern pronunciation, you only have 3 that still do. Okay? So vet, bet. The numerical value is 2. Okay? So right here you'll see it says grammar. It says at, with, of, in, by, through. When we talk about prefixes and suffixes, letters can be used as prefixes and suffixes in the Hebrew language as well. So when we see a word, right, with a bait in front of it, there's a possibility that may be being used as a prefix. So that prefix tells us in or with or by or something, whatever that second thing is, right? So let's see. We can say Beshem, in the Shem, name, right? So Bahar, all right? In or on, or sometimes even it can be translated as under. Then the word har, meaning a mountain. So on a mountain, in a mountain. You could be in a cave somewhere, you know what I mean? So that's Bahar. Okay? So that's what I said when I asked for prefix and stuff, that some of these also are prefix, have prefixal or suffix meanings. Yes. No, I'm sorry, I didn't. Thank you for reminding me. So Aleph as a prefix. You might as well write it down because I didn't put it on here. Aleph as a prefix means I will. Okay? Aleph as a prefix, I will. All right? Well, it's going to get its sound from whatever vowel point is used with it. It can be, yeah. Most likely it will be, because again, it's a silent letter. And so if you're going to use it to open a syllable with, you got to have a sound there. No, it does. Well, okay. It's going to be at the beginning of the word. But sometimes you'll have maybe 2, sometimes even 3 in a very complex. Sometimes there are these complex meanings, right? Or there's a lot of that's wanting to be said. You know what I mean? Yeah. No. No. The word, no, you have B, in, and then Shem. It's this, no, it's one prefix. Right. The bait, in. Aleph, I will. All right. Bet is in with, um, you know, in with, at, around. It shows proximity. Okay. Shows proximity. So on the top level, or the Peshat, it's a tent or some sort of house, some sort of dwelling. So the word bait is very similar to the word bayit, which means a house. Okay, so bet, it means a dwelling, a tent. Okay, now it can mean to build, it can mean to add. Now, the concepts of mathematics are tied up in this letter. So it means to add. It can also mean to subtract, to divide, to multiply, because all of these things happen in a house. Case in point, a man leaves his home and he finds a lovely young lady and they get married and he brings her back. What has he done? He's added to that house. Okay? Later on, they decide, hey, we need some little feet running around here. So now they multiply, right? But say things don't really go very well later in that same marriage. She decides to go her way, he decides to go his way. That's division. Because they're not at one anymore. He goes this way, she goes that way, right? But say things do work out. And much, much later down the road, they grow old together. And one of them, heaven forbid, gets sick and passes away. There's your concept of subtraction. All of these things happen in a house. So the concepts of multiplication, addition, subtraction, division, those are all kept under this letter as well. Okay? It does mean a house. But here's another thing. Where does the Spirit reside? In your body. So basically, your body is a house for the Ruach HaKodesh. So the bait can also be symbolic of the body. Yeah. They're just kind of mixed in there. Okay. Now the first one is always going to be Peshat. I'm just going to, it's always going to be that. Because that's the easiest one to understand. Or the easiest one to dissect, shall we say. Okay? But I'm just trying to show you that all of these things can be encapsulated in this one letter. So when we talk about the scriptures being very deep and we could study them our entire lives and we'll still never know everything. We'll still never understand it. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean that we should quit trying. Okay? But we got to know that there's just going to be some things that he's going to have to explain to us. As his disciples did that, right? Declare unto us the parable. Explain it to us. We didn't get it, you know? And he's like, man, what is wrong with y'all? No, but, you know, and then he would explain it to them. You know what I'm saying? So there's going to be, when we get there, there's going to be things that we have questions about. And we'll be like, look, Father, I don't understand this. You know what I mean? Why did we do this? Or why were we supposed to have done that or not? And then he'll explain it to us. And then we'll know. All right. So, like I said, to build, to add, subtract, multiply, divide, it's a house, all right? Because you build a house, right? But the body is also a house for the Ruach HaKodesh, and for your spirit that you walk around with every day, okay? So on the negative side, what do we see? We saw to build. So what do we see on the negative side? To destroy, to tear down, right? All right. So we talked about addition. We talked about multiplication. Those are positive things. Subtraction and division are seen as negative things. Well, in what? All right. Division is usually brought about through anger or, okay? That's why I use the example of two people living in the same house. They can't decide, they can't be married anymore, right? So they decide, hey, you go your way, I'll go mine. I can't even stand to look at you. So they're divided. They're no longer, and as it was like with raising their children, all right? Your children are going to get a much clearer picture if both parents are a united front than one saying, no, you can't do it, and the other one saying, yeah, you can. That's it's confusion, right? So division, like I said, is usually has its basis in confusion and disunity. Right. Abraham told him, he said, you choose which way you want to go, and I'll go the opposite. Because he didn't want to cause any trouble. He didn't want to have any division, be any confrontation between him and Lot. So Abraham sought to do the honorable thing, right? Where it said that Lot's guys were just attacking Abraham's guys and it just over the wells and all this kind of stuff. Subtraction can happen through no fault of your own. Like I said, death. That's why I use the two old people and that, nobody's fault. But now the house is one person poor because of a situation. So that's kind of the idea behind it. Okay. So to destroy, to divide, and to refuse instruction. Remember, back in the day, where were people taught? Their parents taught them, or the elders taught them, right? And they may teach them in an informal setting, like a house. Or how many times have you heard in the scriptures, you got the old members of the city, where are they? They're sitting at the gate, and the younger guys are hanging out with them because they're learning things. So instruction and teaching is seen under bait as well. But to refuse instruction, or I ain't doing it, I'm not doing it, that's the negative side of bait. Okay? Scroll it up. Any questions on I didn't show you, roll it back down. I didn't show you bait's cursive. Okay, you ready? That's bait's cursive, that form right there. So that's bait's cursive form. Okay? All right, Chris, scroll up. All right. So now we're going to go to the third letter. We're going to the third letter, right? Which is Gimel. Gimel. So the word Gimel means a camel. Okay, that's what the word Gimel means, a camel. Right? So when we look at it here in the proto-Sinaitic form, it looks like a letter L, doesn't it? That is because it was supposed to symbolize the leg and the foot. So like here's the calf coming down and then there's the foot. Because it's of anything, of a person actually. Okay? But it symbolized the leg and the foot because it spoke of support. And we stand on our feet and our legs support us. Okay? It's the third letter, so it's the third number. It has a G sound for us. G. Right? Now, in English, we have two different G sounds. We have a soft G, G. Then we have hard G, J, like in the word gemstone. Right? But you'll not have that sound in Hebrew. You're just going to have the soft G sound. There was another letter way back yonder. It's kind of like a GH that's formed way back in the throat. and you'll choke on it. I'm going to shut this off because it sounds terrible. That's why they took it out. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's way back in the throat. Yeah, it was only used in a proto-cyanatic ancient form. They got rid of it.
No, because I'm trying to hear it.
Yeah, it's just something that you have to train for. All right, but it had a form like this. Yeah, kind of like that. Kind of like that. So it was shaped like this. It's actually a piece of twisted rope or a piece of twisted flax. No, it was another letter, but they got rid of it. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't exist anymore. No, it was before that. Okay, so then you had this form here that looks like an upside down L kind of. All right, that's the paleo. Right? And here it looks kind of like, instead of it being a foot, a leg and a foot, here it looks like a head and a neck. Okay? See, it looks like a head and a neck. And then you have the Asher script form, Gimel. Okay? So, yeah. So there's your script form. Okay? So that's your script form right there. Okay? It's kind of like an upside down question mark. It's really kind of what, without the dot. All right? So it's kind of like an upside down question mark without the dot. Okay? So, as the name implies, Gimel, it's a camel. Okay? That's the literal Peshat meaning, top level. Okay? So, you've got the concepts of carrying something, supporting somebody, being a beast of burden, right? Now, you'll take the camel and load him down with all kinds of junk, and he'll carry it across the desert. But you're not going to take a camel and hook him up to a plow. He don't do that. He's not built for that, right? So there's a difference between a work animal and a beast of burden. They call it a beast of burden because his job is to carry things. Yeah, they can be. So to carry, all right, a benefit, a help. Because if you had to carry all that junk, you'd never get to where you're trying to get to, right? These nomads, there are nomads that use, and they pack up their whole, everything, the whole camp is on one camp. They're just walking across, and the camel's just plodding along, doing his thing. But it's a benefit to the people because they're not having to try and carry all that stuff. How long would it take them to get to where they were trying to get? Probably a lot longer. And they'd be a whole lot tireder when they got there, right? Okay? So movement or to help. All of those things. It all falls under support. All right? Helping. Being a benefit or a blessing to someone. Okay? Then on the negative side, what do we have? If you're not moving, you're doing what? You're sitting still. It's just like us. If we don't continue to walk in the Word, what happens to us? We get stagnant, right? Right? We get stagnant. If you don't got nothing coming in and there's nothing going out, there's nothing there. It's just going to get nasty and stinky and yucky and full of junk. You know what I mean? And it's no good. You know what I'm saying? So the negative side of of the gimel is to become stagnant, to stop moving, to sit down. Okay? To hinder. So instead of helping, we're hindering somebody. Somebody needs us to help them carry a burden. But we don't want to listen to it. We got other things to do. So we're hindering that. We're not being a blessing. We're not being a benefit. A person comes to you and says, hey, I need your help. I need to talk to somebody about XYZ. Brother, I'd sure like to help you, man, but my wife's got supper waiting on me at home. I really need to get going. Knowing full well that his wife ain't home, she's at work. He just don't want to be bothered with it. Right? So the scriptures tell us that we're supposed to lift each other up, not push each other down. We're supposed to be a help, not a hindrance. So now you can see why that's on the negative side. And of course, refusal. Refusal to move, refusal to help, refusal to support, refusal to help you carry your burden. All right? If you got an animal, I've seen them do it on TV. Now that camel, sometimes he'll get his mindset. He ain't going nowhere. And he'll just lay there and nothing they can do to get him to move. They can beat him, yell at him, whip him. That's just going to make him stay there even longer. So that's the concept of refusal. Okay? And the Father does that. Sometimes he wants us to get up and move. But guess what? A lot of times we refuse. I'm not doing it. I don't feel like it. I don't recall him asking you whether you felt like it. Right? He says, do this. I'll get to it when I get time. That's not what he's looking for. So that's the concept of the gimel. That's the understanding. Yes, sir. Gimel doesn't have one. Gimel is not used as a prefix. Okay? Or as a suffix. There are some letters that are always prefixes and suffixes. Yes. A great deal of the time. But no, Kim's right. It's not always, okay? But there are some letters that are always a prefix. Some that are always a suffix. Some that are sometimes. And we're going to talk about that in another lesson. I've got another lesson that's devoted completely to prefixes and suffixes and their frequencies and how they're used. We'll get there. Okay? But gimel is not used as a prefix or a suffix. Okay? Good question. All right. And like I said, value of 3. Okay? Chris? All right. So now we're going to go to number 4, which is dalet. Okay? Dalet. So it has a D sound for us. Has a numerical value of 4. Okay? So we see the older form, because the dalet is like a doorway for us. It's supposed to give us the picture of a doorway. So here you have like a wall with a casement attached to it, right? So this could be a door here. In the in the paleo, it's like a triangle. Okay? It's like a triangle. And like Kim said, it could be like a tent flap. You've seen a tent flap, right? It could be triangular in shape. So that could be a doorway, a pathway, a way of going in or coming out. Okay? And then we have this Asher form here. Okay? So we've got the Asher form. So, are you ready for the script form? That's your script form. It looks kind of like a 2, yeah. All right, it looks kind of like a 2. But that's your script form. Okay? So, on the top, what is it? It's a doorway, a pathway. It's a way of going in, a way of going out, okay? So, it speaks to us of insight. Access mostly. right? Because we go into a room through a door or through a passageway or whatever. So the Dalet speaks to us of insight and access. All right? See my way to get into this room. I got to go through this doorway. Okay? And that's how you get in. All right? It's an entrance, but it's also an exit. Okay? Yahushua said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man comes to the Father but how? But some say by, some translations say by, some say through. So he said, I am the way. So it shows us a direction. He's the only way that we can come to the Father. Correct? So that's what he was talking about. But that's the letter Dalet that we talk. It's an entrance. It's an access point. Okay? On the negative side, what is it? It's a blocked passage, a barred gate. Do not enter. Right? Well, no, not necessarily no trespassing, but it's a way that you can't access something. Okay, it's like what? Huh? Yeah, it's like I said, like a gate or some way, something that blocks your access. Okay, because the scriptures tell us that no man comes to the Father but through the Son. So that's him saying, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life." Right. This is blocked. It's like a hallway that's collapsed. You can't get it through there. It's going to take you a long time to move all that junk. You're going to be tired and probably cut up and dirty and everything. You know what I mean? But by that time, yeah, the cops are already grabbing you and stuffing you in the back of the car. All right. But it's also, see how we talked about insight? In this case, it's also closed-mindedness. Well, that ain't the way that my grandpa did it. And that ain't what my pastor told me. You see what I'm saying? But it's that type of attitude that stops people from getting what they need, right, from the word. Because, well, that's not how I've heard it my whole life. Well, guess what? Your whole life can be wrong. True? The scriptures say that our fathers have inherited lies and vanities and things in where there is no profit. You know, I'm 50 plus years old. There was stuff that I was raised with. My mom, she's wrong. No, I'm joking. I was just no, but what I'm saying is, you know, she remembers. You know, I grew up in the same church she did. And they taught us the same stuff. It was wrong. Now, were they doing it on purpose? I don't think so. It was just how they understood. They just didn't know. But the question is, when you're presented with it, and we do this every week, Rebbe brings stuff and we're just, wow. Stuff we heard our whole life and we're like, oh, I never thought about it that way. How many times have you looked at a scripture? How many times have you read a scripture in the Bible that you've read your whole life, but now you see it with Hebraic eyes, and now you say, wait a minute. Who snuck that scripture in my Bible? Because it's never been there before. You know what I'm saying? So that idea of, well, I hear you, but I ain't, you know, I see it, but I'm not going to believe it. That whole concept of, I don't care if you can show it to me in black and white. If I don't think it's right, it ain't right. I had a person tell me that one time. And I told him, I said, well, then that means that we're at an impasse and we need to just quit talking about this because you're not going to listen. The scriptures say, don't throw your pearls before swine. And then, like I said, there's a barred way. So it's something that blocks. All right? So most of the time, what is it that blocks our way? It's us. We block our own way. Right? The scriptures say that his commandments are not grievous, but we make them much heavier than what they really are. Yeah. Exactly. Without him, you have no access. Your way is blocked. Your way is barred. You can't approach the Father without him. That's what's wrong with Kabbalah. All right? Kabbalah teaches you that through the intonation of certain three-letter combinations of letters and meditation on these things, that you can work your way through the worlds of creation and all this kind of stuff, and that you can literally step into the throne room of Yahweh without ever having to go through his son, and that you can share his intelligence through your own deeds. That's ridiculous. Talk about a lie. Talk about being confused. Talk about Babylon, right? Confusion. Yes, yes.
It reminds me of witchcraft and magic.
They're all the same thing.
Yeah, it's trying to get around Yahushua.
It's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. Okay? So, like you said, Sister Cece, okay, he is the way. But an example of the barred path is trying to get to the Father without him. Because you'll never make it. Right? Is this helping anybody? Okay, cool. All right, so that's the letter Dalet. Now we're going to work on our last letter for today, and that's the letter Hey. Scroll it up just a little bit, son. All right. No. If it will, brother, I'll tell you. Because it's in my mind now to let y'all know. Hey, thank you, Kim, for bringing it to my thoughts, because I hadn't even thought about it. Yeah. So, the letter Hey, fifth letter in the Aleph Beit. Okay? Fifth letter. Value of 5. So, the Hey can be used as a prefix, and it means the. Hashem, the name. All right? Well, that's part of, you would say, Hamelech Hadawid. That's part of forming the word based on his importance. But if you wanted to say the king, we'll use it that way. Hamelech. The Melech, king or ruler. No, H-A, Mm-hmm. Well, He is the name of the letter. He is the name of the letter. But again, it's going to be pointed with vowel points and things and that's what we have to pay attention to. That's what tells us how to pronounce it. But we know that He is the name. So it makes an H sound, or an aspirated breath. Okay? That's why when he changed people's names, he put a Hey in their name, right? Abraham went to Abraham. Sarai became Sarah, right? He put a Hey in their name because he was breathing his spirit into them, and they changed. Well, it's Hoshe, right? But he changed his name was changed to Joshua. Right, he was Hoshe was his name, Hoshe the son of Nun. All right, but anyway, so like I said, value of 5. So the proto-Sinaitic, the earliest form, it's a little man standing there with his hands up. Kind of funny because we've been talking about what the past few weeks? Hands up. Yeah, it's over there. All right, but it's a little guy with his hands up. Okay? There's another form of the letter that you may see as proto-Sinaitic, and you'll have the little head, and you'll have his little arms up, and then you'll have, instead of coming down to legs, it comes down to a little sweeping, it does kind of look like an old ghost or something. Yeah. But what that is it's kind of like the priest, like a priest walking in and seeing something wondrous. Oh, and it's his robes trailing behind him. This is another form of this. Okay, you'll see different forms. All right. So the second form, or the paleo, is this kind of a backwards comb or something, right? That's kind of what it looks like, yeah. Or if you kind of think about it spatially, it could be one of those little garden trowels, like a little garden fork that you use, a little look like a chicken foot, something like that, But anyway, that's the form in the paleo. And then, of course, in the Asher script, you see it. You've got this crossbar with a leg down. There's a leg in the front, and there's a gap between the crossbar and the front leg. That's how you know that it's a hey and not a het. Because het, the front leg is connected. Okay, no gap. Those are what we call look-alike letters, and you got to be careful with them. Tzad and ayin, those are two. Dalet and resh, those are two. Hey and het, those are two. They have a tendency to look very similar. And I'll teach you tricks to learn how. I'll teach you tricks to look for to show you, okay, this letter is this. In this case, we know hey is hey because it has that gap in front of it. It has a gap between the front leg. All right. So are we ready for the script form? This one is really tough, you guys. It's going to be, get ready. Flex all your artistic skills for this one. All right, you ready? That's it. That's the script form of hey. Well, that's the cursive. Like when you're. No, it's just, like I said, this is just interpersonal. So for the example, so if we do an L, right? So here's a block form of L. Here's a cursive form of L. The same thing. It's just a stylized form of it. And like I said, with the cursive or the script form, that's usually used for personal letters and stuff like that. You're not going to see it, in a newspaper or something like that. Uh-huh. No, it's the same thing. There's really no symbology there, no. But the meaning is still there. You don't get hung up in, it's the same letter, although the form of it is different, right? Although the form is different, the letter hasn't changed. So the original meaning is still there. Just hasn't changed, that's all. Right. Usually when there were two of them together, there would be a longer one. Yeah, it still had the same sound, still had the same meaning. It was still the letter S. It was just the fashion of writing it was different at that time. Okay? So we see that it is a man with his hands upheld. And what he's showing here is he's showing surprise or wonder. Behold, wow, something miraculous. A rainbow, a waterfall, whatever. A wildebeest. I don't know. He maybe never seen one. Maybe never seen an elephant before. Oh, wow, this is amazing. This is incredible. It's something that is surprising and something that is wondrous. And he's got his hands raised. Why? He's praising the Father for this wonderful thing that he sees. Right? It's also symbolic because this can be seen, this paleo form, it can be seen as a winnowing fork, a rake. That's how you separate the wheat and the chaff, right? You beat it out. And what's the good part? The wheat. The chaff is the no good part. So what does a winnowing fork do? You beat it out, you get a scoop, you throw it in the air, the heavy wheat falls down, the chaff blows away. That's what the Ruach does. The Ruach separates between what's true and what's false. And so and remember we talked about it? What did he do when he changed their names? he breathed that hay, that breath into them, right? Well, the scriptures say that when he formed Adam out of the dust of the ground, what did he do? He breathed into his nostrils, so that breath that he put in Abraham and Sarah, that's why Abraham went and started making all kind of babies after that, didn't he? He had the ruach in him, and his whole body was rejuvenated. Oh, you have 12 more sons with Keturah? And this is a man that's over 100 years old. So the breath, the ruach, right? That supernatural breath that comes from that spirit, that's caught up in this letter here. And it's important that you see that with the winnowing fork, because the spirit is what separates those two things. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess you could say it that way. The chaff is the leftover, it's the waste, it's the refuse. The good stuff is the wheat. So it falls down. But the wind, the breath, takes the bad stuff. You see what I'm saying? All right. So, like I said, we have Yahweh's Ruach. We have the concept of praise. The scriptures say that he inhabits the praise of his people, right? And we see fire as well. Because the Ruach is often seen as what? As a fire. It was in the burning bush, right? Remember in Acts chapter 2? Said that the Holy Spirit descended on them how? It looked like cloven tongues of fire that landed on them, right? So the reason for that is why does it look like a fire? Because in Hebraic thought, fire is an active thing. Also in Hebraic thought, what gets out there when the Father wants him to, what gets out there and gets it done? The Ruach does. So the Ruach is seen to be active and fiery. That's why it's seen as tongues of fire. That's one reason. But without getting too deep into that, that's the whole thing. So we can see that the letter He also speaks of fire as well. Well, spiritual and natural. Because it changes things. Right? And then on the negative, we have doubt. Right? You see it, yeah, I see it, but I don't believe it. I mean, you heard people say that before. Okay? I see it, but I don't believe it. That's doubt. Unwillingness. Dimness. Right? Not shining. He said, you shine forth as lights in a world, right? In what did he say? Where he talked about a crooked and perverse nation where you shine as lights in the world. Well, where do you find darkness? In crookedness and perversity. What is darkness? It's the absence of light. Light, fire comes, light comes from fire. You see what I'm saying? It all kind of works. It's interwoven. And then being unprofitable. Okay? Not doing what you're supposed to do. Yeah, like you talked about an unprofitable servant in the scripture. Right? They have a spirit, but it's not in the right place. It's not doing the right thing, not acting the right way. Feel me? All right, so like I said, the He as a prefix means the. All right, so let's scroll down just a little bit more, Chris. We're going to work on these A-type vowels real quick. We got just a few more minutes. We're actually running a little later than I wanted to. But the first A-type vowel, now you'll notice I put an aleph here. The only reason why I did that was because it's just being used as a placeholder. If I put an X there, then you'd be trying to make these sounds with an X. I know because I did the same thing. Okay? So we see right here this one that looks like a T. That's called kamatz. And it is a long duration. So it sounds like AH. Ah. Okay? So, ah. So look at this name here, or look at this word. We have the aleph, and it's pointed kamatz. So that gives us what sound? Ah. Then we have the letter dalet, and it's pointed kamatz. And that gives us what? Da. And then we have the letter mem sofit. Now, we've not been to this letter before, but it's an M sound, right? So, Adam. So we see Adam, the first guy. Adam, right? So that's his name. But that's an example of those vowel points. Adam. So we move on to the next one. We have patach, which is a short duration. It's like A. So remember, I've always told everybody, and I tell you, vowel points in Hebrew sound just like they do in Spanish. So A, E, I, O, U. Okay? So patach sounds like A. Not A-H, just A. A. All right? You'll find that I put the H on there to lengthen the sound, to let you know it's a longer sound. That's just something I do. Okay? Same sound, but this one is and this one is Same sound. Okay? Mm-hmm. Adam. Mm-hmm. Adam. And this one is short. So let's take a look at this one. We have the letter dalet and patach. So that's da, da. Quick. Not da, but da. Then we have ayin. Now that's a silent letter too. But it's pointed how? Patach, short duration, with a tav behind it, right? So this tav makes a T sound. So now we have at. So we have da'at, which means what? Da'at means knowledge. Da'at. And some people you hear pronounce it as, here's how short the letter is. Here's how short it is. Sometimes you'll hear people pronounce it, and they're not wrong. Okay? Dialects, sometimes they won't pronounce it as da'at. They just pronounce it as dat. It's perfectly valid. Again, because it's dialect. But it means knowledge. Dot. All right, so now we have two dots and then the patach. So like a shava and then the patach, right? So we've got, all right, this is chatef patach. Still makes this short A sound. Okay? But here's the thing. You'll only see this used under a guttural letter. Now, what are guttural letters? Guttural letters, in Hebrew, there are 5 of them. Okay? You have 2 what they call weak gutturals, 2 harsh gutturals, and then you have a singular letter that can be used as a guttural. So, when I say weak gutturals, which is funny because these letters make no sound, but the weak gutturals are aleph and ayin. They make no sound. Well, that's in our thinking, that's how it is. But it's not that way, no. So the aleph and the ayin, like I said, both silent letters, but you may see this form under them, and that's okay. That's the only place that you'll see it, is under guttural letters. So what are our harsh gutturals? Chet and hey. Those are our harsh gutturals. So you have the weak gutturals, aleph, ayin, and then you have the harsh gutturals, hey and chet. Then you have the letter, here's the other guttural that doesn't make any sense. The letter resh. Resh is your 5th guttural. So you can see that under there as well. But it still sounds like this patach. So, what do we have here? We have an aleph with patach. Then we have hey with chatef patach. So since hey is a guttural letter, we can do that. All right, so we have aha, Then we have a vate pointed kamatz hey, which is a long duration, right? Kamatz hey, ah. So what's the word? Ahava, which means love. Ahava. And then we have the last one. We have the kamatz with a hey following it. That's kamatz hey. So it makes it saying long duration. It's a full vowel variant, okay? But it still makes the sound ah, long. Okay? So in this case, we have a letter sin, right? Indicators on the left. It's pointed how? Kamatz. Sa. Then we have a resh pointed kamatz hey, ra. Sarah. Right? Sarah, Abraham's wife. All right. So when we pronounce the A, it's like the sound that we get in the word aqua. We just have short and long. That's it. It's just different forms of them. Yeah. And when I say short and long, I'm talking about the duration that you hold the sound. Not like in English, where we were told that a short A was ah and a long A was a. That's not how it's done in this language. So we have a short duration, long duration. What are you talking about? Talking about the name of the vowel point? It's ka. Kametz. Kametz hey. Mm-hmm. No. No. Kametz hey is just the same as the others. Yes. AH. It's a variant. It's just a variant. That's all. So it makes the same sound, but it's just a different way to go about it. What that does is that puts an aspiration on the end of the word. Okay? And I chose Sarah's name for a purpose. Okay? Because, think about it. Before, what was her name before? Sarai, which means my princess. All right? So Sar means a prince or royalty, usually of a younger sort. Okay? So Sar means prince. Sarah, you know what I mean? Okay, so you've got a royal, but that yud on the end, Sarai, my princess, because she belonged to Abraham. However, when she became the mother of the nations, what happened? He took the ownership away from Abraham, breathed his spirit into her, and she became the mother of the world. Right? So instead of being my princess, she became basically a princess of the spirit that pervades the entire universe. But he used her as the very birthplace, basically, for the nation. So these are some hard concepts to grasp sometimes. And in my position, it's hard. It's hard for me to know where to stop. Because I want people to understand, but sometimes it's hard. These are advanced concepts sometimes to think of. Just know this. Kamatz hey is a variant. So that's why I'm always asking, and a lot of times, and it can happen anywhere in a word, but it's usually towards the end. But that's why I'm always saying, okay, like followed by kamatz hey. It's easy for me to see because I'm used to looking for it. You know what I mean? But they have the same sound. Same sound. And of course, there's all kinds of philosophy and folklore and all kinds of things that you can get into. But is that what we're interested in? No. What we're interested in is, how do we pronounce this word? We want to understand. What's it mean? Not, Rabbi so and so of blessed memory said this when you looked at the gematria of this and the, you know, we don't care about all that. That's not what matters. We're not worried about the tradition, right? Tradition. We're not worried about the tradition. We're not worried about the folklore. We want to know what this word says. And so that's why we do this. But like I said, it's hard for me sometimes because it's like, oh man, you know, let me give you this. Sometimes it's too much. You know what I mean? But bless his heart, he's such a cute little fellow. So like I said, I hope that this has been helpful. We've never had a chance to actually go through this kind of, you know what I mean, and get some understanding, you know, and some history and some this and that, you know. Oh, it is. Well, remember what did Yahushua say? I'm the Aleph and the Tav. I'm the first and the last, right? So everything is contained within him. You know, and the scriptures tell us that how was everything created? It was spoken, right? So we got to know these letters and these sounds. Oh, that's no problem, bro. No problem. So anyway, okay, I think that's where we're going to call it today. Again, I hope this was helpful for everybody. Love you, appreciate you.